what is logotherapy? Logotherapy is understanding the meaning of life, understanding the meaning of what's happening in your life. There's a big difference between understanding the meaning of life and understanding the meaning of your life. And what we are trying to do is helping you understand the meaning of your life. Because every human life is unique. Everybody is different from one another. Right? And there are certain core principles that logotherapy follows, which we will get into in due course. So logotherapy is the third school of psychology, is the third identified Viennese school of psychology. And the first two schools of psychology, as we all know, it was founded by the first school of psychology was founded by the father of modern psychology, which is Sigmund Freud, where in a nutshell he spoke about the fact that everything that human beings do revolve around the whole concept of seeking pleasure. If you know there's pleasure at the end of the journey, human beings will go through that very comfortably. This notion of seeking pleasure was challenged by a student of Sigmund Freud by the name of Alfred Adler, who kind of created a new school of psychology, and he said that it is not pleasure that human beings go after, but it is the whole idea of seeking power. Power is what drives you in our daily lives. It's what drives human beings in our daily lives. And if we know we're going to get powerful at the end of the journey, in whatever context, whether it's physical power, mental power, financial power, any kind of political power, any kind of power, you would happily go through that journey. So largely psychologists and psychiatrists have been following these two schools of psychology, and that's what they have been toying with in this world. Frankl was part of the Adlerian school of psychology, where he also advocated the whole principle of power as a way to resolve problems of human mind for a very long time, I think for about 10 to 12 years of his career. But as he was practicing as an Adlerian psychologist, he tended to realize that it was not power or pleasure that human beings were after, but the fundamental question of why are things happening to me in life. When something happens to us, we don't really start thinking that, okay, it is happening, it's fine, I'm going to wait for the pleasure or the power moment to happen to me after the end of the journey. But the first instant question that comes in is, why did this happen to me? And what is the reason? What is the purpose? What is the meaning of this thing that has happened to me in life? That's the first thing that we always ask. So for example, if we end up losing a job, okay, at that point of time, we don't instantly think that, okay, you know what, something good is waiting to happen. Maybe I'll find something better. The first reaction is, why did this happen to me? Why did I lose the job? Why was I chosen to leave? Or what went wrong, and what is the reason why I was asked to leave or whatever? That's the first thing that happened. On hindsight, where a lot of us think, because once you are out of a certain situation, you tend to think about a newer opportunity, a newer job, a newer prospect, and when you end up in that prospect, that time you suddenly feel, yeah, I think what happened for the good, right? It was a good thing. I personally went through this philosophy in my life, and I had 8 terrible months of depression way back in 2006. When I sold my company, I joined a new company, my first organization after I shut down my business. Those 9 to 10 months that I was part of that new organization, that I was trying to do something, were the worst months or worst period of my life. It was a really toxic environment. It was really a toxic company that I used to work for. Okay, that point of time when I quit that company overnight, I went into a deep shock, because at that time, that was like the end of the world for me. I mean, you can imagine a person who was successful, setting up a business, shutting that down, joining a new company with the hope that now I'm going to learn something new and I'm going to build a career out of it. But in 9 to 10 months, you are out. You're now without a job. You can't go back and start your old business because you have a no-compete clause with your company that you sold it out to. So what do? You get into a depressive phase. You get into a phase where you suddenly start questioning your own existence. So for those 6 to 8 months that I went through that terrible time, I actually had a lot of times where I used to think about life, and when I used to think about the fact that my life is simply over. I have nothing to look forward to. I did have suicidal tendencies and thoughts at that point of time. But I was lucky, I was fortunate to seek help at the right time. I was fortunate that my parents were able to help me at the right time. I was fortunate I found a mentor at that time who became my coach, who's been my coach now for the last 18 years. And I'm really happy and proud that I still continue to go back to her as and when I need any help, even though now she's retired and she's well settled in life, but still, I'm really fortunate to have found somebody like that. And she held my hand and she said, everything's going to be fine. She literally pulled me out of that. And now when we sit and talk about that era, I suddenly feel how stupid I was of thinking something like this. Why was I thinking in that manner? Because it was the universe's way of actually putting me out of a toxic environment, and that is what pushed me into this business of brand licensing, which today I'm a successful part of in the last 18 years. So had that not happened, probably life would have been very different for me. But at that stage, that seemed correct to think in that manner. Right? So usually when something goes wrong with us, we always tend to think about the negative things first. We always start thinking about the fact that why did this happen to me? Right? And that's a critical moment, because many of us slip into a depression, slip into this whole mental state from where coming out becomes very difficult. So if we are surrounded by friends, by family, by mentors, by teachers, and that's why I always tell everyone that, we always say that be friends with your lawyers, with your chartered accountant, with your doctors, right? But one of the most important people that we need to invest in is having a mentor or a coach. Because if you have that, a lot of things that you're doing around you will actually fall into place, right? And that's very critical as well from our point of view. So with logotherapy, we kind of focus on finding the why. And Frankl talks about the fact that it's better to start addressing the why from the moment something goes wrong, right? And at times, it's also important to start focusing on the why even before something is going wrong, so that you know your direction very well. You know your purpose in life, your why of your life, the meaning of your life, as you guys talked about Ikigai, the meaning of your life well in advance. So Frankl created the school of psychology called Logotherapy, which also is slightly different from the other schools because it's also open-ended, and it also has a bent of a touch of spiritualism in it. Okay? It does talk about the cosmic connections. It does talk about spiritualism, not religion, but spiritualism. Right? In this form of psychology, we believe that religion is a person's individual choice. Yes, we are born in a religion. Whether we practice or not is up to us. Okay? And as an individual, that's your prerogative. Nobody can thrust it onto you, right? It's a different story. Lots of institutions are there today, and lots of families today are thrusting religion on their people. But that's a debatable concept, and that's something we can address later. But spiritually, each individual, whether we like it, we don't like it, whether we admit it or we don't admit it, we are connected to the universe, to the creator, to this cosmic energy in whatever form we want to describe it. You want to give it a name, you want to give it a figure, you want to just call it Mother Nature, Earth, Universe, Creator, anything. But we are all connected to it in some way or the other. And there are lots and lots of proven sciences that actually go on to show, that there is a deep connection there as well. Conscious manifestation is one of the most powerful techniques that actually go on to prove that you can make things happen. You can make the universe work for you if you really want it, with all your passion, with all your convictions towards it. And there are other ways of science that kind of go on to, other practices that go on to prove that as well. So Frankl started working, while he was working with Adler, he started creating the school of psychology where he started talking about the meaning of life. He started talking to his patients about the meaning of life. What are they seeking? What is their purpose? What is the reason why they are doing things in life, etc. Right? And he created this term called the meaning therapy. So initially, this school of psychology is called as the meaning therapy. Later on, it turned out to be logotherapy. Logotherapy is nothing but a Greek word for meaning. Logo is logos. Okay? So it's a logo. Right? You have a logo of a particular coffee shop. It means something. Of a company, it means something. So this is about creating the logo of your life. It's about creating the meaning of your life. What is it that defines you as a person, who you are, what you are really made of, and more importantly, what is the meaning of your life per se? And what is it that you really want to make out of that life? And why you're doing certain things. So he started researching on these topics through his patients, and he started writing the book, which is Man's Search for Meaning. Man's Search for Meaning has two parts. The first half of the book is an autobiography of him, his 2.5 years in the concentration camps, but the second half of the book are concepts of logotherapy. It's like a textbook of sorts, and that's why for many people it gets very boring, because it's very technical towards the second half of the book, right? So while he was working in the book, he was trying to finish the book, as in the textbook side of the book. Obviously the war happened and he was taken into custody and he was sent into a concentration camp. He started putting the concepts of logotherapy into action. And the first thing he did was he talks about the fact that if you know the purpose of your life, if you know the meaning of your life, if you have a reason to live, nothing can take life away from you. Right? So what happened when he was taken in the concentration camp, he was with his wife, and his wife was expecting. They were about 2 months into the pregnancy. So this became a sole objective for him while he was at the camp, that he wanted to see his wife and the unborn child when he comes out. So every moment when life was throwing challenges at him, when he was going through all the torture, when he was going through all the pain, all the suffering, he would only think about his wife and his unborn child. It's a different story that they were executed in the first 10 weeks itself. Because, when they discovered that she was pregnant, the people there felt that she was of no use. He did not know this. So for 2.5 years, he started creating a vision, a visual of his son or daughter, of his child, of his wife, and the fact that every single day of his life, he kept on remembering them and wanted to go out to them and meet them, unite with them, and have a good life after that. That was the sole purpose that kept him going. That became the sole meaning and objective of his life. And that is something he started talking to other inmates as well, and many of them adapted that technique. They did things, they went through the suffering because they had somebody waiting for them. They had a meaning, they put a meaning to the suffering itself. Right? If you put a meaning to the suffering, Frankl says, it no longer remains as suffering. It becomes a task in itself, it becomes just a means to achieve an objective. The second reason why he continued to go through what he was going through, the day he was arrested, he had the transcript of the book with him. That transcript was torn into pieces in front of his own eyes the day he was arrested. Now that also shook his core, because this was his work of many years. He was working on this book because he wanted to spread the message of logotherapy to the world. So while he was in the concentration camps, secretly and piece by piece, he actually put the entire book again together. He spent those 2.5 years to put the book together again, piece by piece. And that also became his objective, that also became his meaning, because somehow he wanted to come out and he wanted to spread this word to people. When he came out, obviously the book, the theoretical part of the book was complete, but people encouraged him to add the practical side of his experiences in the concentration camp, and that's how he created this book called Man's Search for Meaning, which went on to become one of the best-selling books of the last century. As voted by the US Congress, it was amongst the top 100 must-have books of the last century. And it was a book that influenced a lot of people. Like you said, in America, in Europe, a lot of people even today follow that. He went on to write 39 books after that, and every book he started expanding the whole concept of logotherapy. He started talking about newer ideas, newer concepts, newer things that were happening around, and he gathered around a lot of other people in the logotherapy domain who started adding to the science itself, which slowly and steadily evolved into a school of psychology per se. And a lot of prominence came to it when it was brought to light by Ikigai, the very famous book that a lot of us have read. And also during COVID. During COVID, something really interesting happened. The BBC created a survey which was actually based on analyzing people's minds, okay, during COVID. And they used a very simple way to understand the impact of COVID on people. Those who lost someone, those who did not lose anybody. Okay. They analyzed, they did a lot of research around this across Europe, across America, in several parts of Asia as well, where they actually came to a conclusion that people who actually lost somebody during COVID, people who actually suffered during COVID, came out much stronger as people, as individuals, than those who did not. And a lot of this has got to do with Frankl's philosophy, where he says that suffering is inevitable for human growth. Only when we suffer, only when we go through bad times, only when we go through some kind of a hard time in our lives, will we start valuing the good times that we have. Will we start valuing ourselves better as individuals. We get a kind of a motivation, a kind of a goal, a kind of a push to actually move forward in life. So Frankl started talking about long back that there is an opportunity even in suffering. Now we can define suffering at various levels, right? But if we are able to find opportunity in that suffering, that becomes the strength of human existence. Okay? But if we submit to the suffering and we just kind of sit through it and not do anything about it, if we just give it up simply, that becomes a big challenge, and that is the problem which a lot of people face today. We don't see the opportunity in the suffering. Like I gave you my own example. When I went out of a job and I went through that depression, I was not able to see the opportunity that is possibly going to be waiting on the other side. Had it not been for the depressive phase I went through, I wouldn't have met my mentor. I wouldn't have found a new profession and a new career. I wouldn't have got out of that toxic environment which was really literally killing me at that point of time. Today when I look back, I feel grateful that the universe took good care of me at that time. That the universe transpired and came together and wrote this story of mine where I was literally thrown out of that job. I was forced out of that job. But at that time I felt that was the end of the world. But today I feel grateful, I feel privileged, I feel blessed that there was a cosmic power, there was a universe, there was a nature, there was somebody, there was a creator who took care of me at that point. So Frankl started speaking about these things as time went by, during his lectures, during his books, as he went about teaching and logotherapy in various formats. So what are the key fundamental things in logotherapy that he talks about? There are three things that he basically talks about in logotherapy. Number one, there is meaning in everything that happens in life. Nothing in life is meaningless. Okay? There's always a reason why things happen. Okay? If we go to analyze, and we can take individual examples from our own lives, right? And when we go back and we see, we would realize that, okay, at that time we felt something went wrong. Something happened which shouldn't have happened, right? But today we actually realize that, oh no, it was for the good. It was for the better. It made me a better human being. It made me a better person. It brought me to a better country. It brought me to a better work profile, or gave me a better opportunity, and so on and so forth. There's always a reason why something happens in this life. As they say, there's method in the madness of the universe. Most of the times we don't understand it. So accepting the fact that there is a reason why things are happening is the first step to actually discovering your own self. The second major pillar of logotherapy is the fact as human beings, we are constantly looking for that reason. We are constantly asking for that reason. We are constantly questioning why things are happening around us. Why are we here? What are we doing? What is the purpose? Why am I in this job? So every morning you wake up and you realize, why do I have to go and work? Why am I here? Right? What is it that I'm going to get out of this whole thing? Or why am I in this relationship? Why am I continuing in this marriage? Why am I continuing with this whole thing that's happening in my life? There are reasons around it, and we always question this. Sometimes there are easy answers, we find the answers very easily. Sometimes we never find the answers. In the follow-up book that Viktor Frankl wrote, which is called Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning, he comes to a fact that where he says that there are certain things which are beyond human understanding. And the earlier we accept it, the better our lives are going to become. Sometimes you just have to trust that there is a larger reason, there's a larger power, there's a larger force that's driving what's happening in our lives. Right? So you need to submit to it, and that's where the spiritual element comes in. If we tend to understand and we tend to come to a conclusion that yes, there is a larger plan that's waiting to happen and it's going to be good for me. We have to believe, we have to continue believing in the good part of it. Right? Things can become much easier for us and life can become much easier for us. So the third element that he speaks about is the meaning that we are searching for. And if we find, will be different for different people. And the reason for that is we are all unique individuals. No two people are the same. There are almost 8 billion people on this planet. But not two people can actually have the same brain. Not two people can actually have the same fingerprints. Okay? There is a reason. There is a method in that particular process as well, which we are not aware of. Everybody is trying to do research and science is trying to figure all of those things out. Perfect. As human beings, we always want to know it. We're always curious. But there are certain things in life which we will never understand. So if I tell you to define this painting at the back of the wall, each one of us will have a different answer. Each one of us. Does that mean that your answer is right, mine is wrong, his answer is correct, hers is wrong? No. There's no concept of right or wrong. It's all about your perception. And what will influence your perception? Lots of things. Your genetic makeup, your parental influence, where were you raised, what did you study, what kind of school you went to, what kind of an environment did you grow up, were you in a joint family, were you in a single family, were you in a broken home, were you a single child, were you siblings together, how did you adapt to school, what did you teach, what did you learn in the school, what did your teachers influence you with, eventually what was your profession, where did you go, what kind of friend circle you have, what kind of books you're reading, what kind of movies you're watching, what kind of meetups you're attending, what kind of societies are we living in. You spoke about a very nice example that when you live in Dubai for a few years, you tend to take security for granted. We are fine leaving our cars open, we are fine leaving our laptops open here in a coffee shop and probably go out, and grab something and come back. And we know nobody is going to touch it. Right? That's a perception. But put the same situation to somebody in Asia or someone in Afghanistan or somebody in a war-torn zone in a country, and life is very different. The perception is different because our influence of UAE as a country, the security situation here in this country has made us who we are. So when we look at security very differently versus somebody who's actually in a war zone. He looks at security very differently. For him, it's a daily survival thing, right? But for us, this is more like a human right. This is something we want as human beings. We expect this to happen. And that's why when we go back to our home countries, a lot of us face this challenge. Because we don't see the same security in our home countries. And then we tend to compare things. Our influences, our experiences actually influence how we look at life itself. How we look at the world itself. And it's a very beautiful example that I always think about, and I'm sure all of you have read about this, was about this case in the US, where this little boy of 14 years old was jailed, was caught because he was stealing bread, from a bakery. And he was arrested and he was put in front of a jury. And when the jury asked him, why did you steal? He said, my mother has not eaten for 3 days. Now, there was a dilemma in front of the jury. Was he right or was he wrong? In all moralistic instincts, what he did was right. His mother had not eaten for 3 days, and as any human being would do, he would go and grab that first piece of bread available and give it to his mother. And the jury actually ruled that it was not his fault, but it was the fault of the whole institution. It was the fault of the entire country and the administration that even today, young people like him or people like him have to sleep without food, without water, without shelter. It's an administrative failure. It's not the failure of the human being. Legally speaking, yes, what he did was wrong. He should have been fined. He should have been sent to jail. But under what circumstance did he actually did what he did? When you look at it from a moral point of view, what he did was right. Because it was all about survival. And he did exactly what any one of us would have done in a situation like this. So Frankl talks about the fact that it is not the idea of whether you're right or wrong, but it's about the situation you are in. It's about how you react to a particular situation. That is what makes us human. That is what we are all looking for. That was the meaning of life. For that young boy, the only meaning that existed for him was to get food for his mother. He found an easy way out. Questionable, debatable, you can sit, argue for a long time. But whether he was right or whether he was wrong is something that's very subjective. I'm sure half of us will have a different opinion around it, the other half would have a very different opinion around it. But that's fine. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions in this case. So how do we put these three principles of logotherapy into practice or into action? Frankl talks about something called as the human trial or the human triangle, as he says. There are three ways of how we as individuals can really implement logotherapy into our own lives. Number one, he talks about the fact that we need to focus on our creative skills. It is extremely important to focus on the creative side of our lives. Most of us have forgotten about it, unfortunately. Most of us do not understand that we have two sides of the brain. We're supposed to use both. We get so bogged down in our work, in our life, in our careers, in everything else that we forget that we have a creative side. Our brain has been designed to actually reduce its own stress levels. So the moment we start using the right side of the brain, the left side of the brain, which is so logical, which is so heavy in his life, will automatically start to subside and there will be a balance of life. And that is what we tend to focus on when it comes to the practical implementation of logotherapy. And it has happened with many people. I will give you a practical instance with one of my clients. There is a restaurateur based here in Dubai. She runs her own businesses. She came for one of our group sessions like this and reached out to me the following day and said, I want to talk to you about something. She came, she met me, we spoke for almost an hour and a half, where she told me how her life was a fairy tale. She was in Dubai for 18 years, had a wonderful family, loving husband, stable financial life, her own house, own cars, runs her own restaurants, has 4 restaurants of her own, great career, stable life, everything is stable. And I knew she was going to, at the end of the day, come up with something which was so typical. And after speaking for 1.5 hours, telling me all about her fairy tale life, she said, despite all of this, I'm not happy. Simple, right? Story of our lives. Many of our lives, right? We're not happy. So, money didn't buy happiness to her. A good, stable family life didn't buy happiness to her. What was missing in her life? So, as a simple technique, which we practice in logotherapy, I made her write down her itinerary for the day. She would wake up at 5 in the morning, sleep at around 11:30 in the night. And she told me how she would do things for her children, for her husband, for her family, for her in-laws, for her house, for her business, for everything that was happening around in her life. What was missing was her own me time. So the only question I asked her at the end of the first session was, what do you do for yourself in this whatever 18 hours of journey that you have in your life? And for a moment she struggled to answer. She didn't know what I was actually asking her. The question I was trying to ask her is, what do you do that brings you happiness as an individual? So she started giving me answers. Oh, I love spending time with my children. Parenting. I enjoy spending time with my husband. Companionship. I love spending time with my team, profession. I love spending time with my friends, socializing. I love spending time with my in-laws, responsibility. Where is your own time? There is no time. We went further deep into her life and figured out that before she came to Dubai, she was an artist. She used to paint, she used to draw. And I asked her, why did she stop? Very simple answer. She came to a new country, got married, had her own things to look after. Kids happened in the very first year. Life took a U-turn. Never went back to thinking about art. Typical story with a lot of us. Right? So the next session when she came back, we gave her a canvas and I gave her a paintbrush and I said, now draw. And in an hour's time, she actually came out with a beautiful painting. And she had tears in her eyes because she told me that she's never felt so happy in the last 18 years. This last 1 hour of her life was a transformation because she realized that what she was missing in her life was that use of the creative side of her brain. So despite her hectic schedule, she promised to remove 15 to 20 minutes daily, at least daily, wherever she could, to paint and draw. And today she's got her own paintings in her own restaurants. And every time she finishes a new painting, she messages me and says, I'm done something. And very recently I was in her restaurant, I went and met her, I accidentally met her, and I accidentally met her husband, and she was like, what did you do to her? She's a completely different person in the last 1 year. And I explained to him the same thing. I did not do anything. I only told her what was missing in her life. Her life is wonderful, no complaints. But she just needed those 15 minutes, and it is her own words. Those 15 minutes have energized her own life. Because that's what she was meant to do, that's what she likes to do. If you recall a direct connection to Ikigai here, a lot of us get so bogged down with work. By the time that retirement time comes, and suddenly one fine day, you retire from your work life, then the emptiness that kicks in is the one that's the most, as we call it, like the silent killer that's happening in the world today. It's very common in Europe with the aging population. I was in Tokyo last entire week and I saw so many people and so many friends I met in Tokyo who says that we are struggling with our parents because now they don't know what to do next. They leave their jobs. The next day, there's a vacuum. So it's very important to nurture hobbies, very important to nurture activities, very important to nurture things which are going to continue to fuel our brains. When this sudden thing stops, when this madness called work stops in our lives. So that's the first principle of how we try to adapt changes, bring about changes in somebody's life when they come to us for advice on logotherapy. A lot of people have also found careers based on this. The circle of Ikigai, right? What you're good at, right? What you really want to do, whether the world needs it and whether the world is ready to pay you for that. If you're able to find that circle, that's your Ikigai, right? So if you're able to find your creativity, sometimes that also becomes your profession. And that's the ideal world situation. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen for most of us, but it's an ideal world situation. So creativity can actually transform lives in a great manner, which most of us tend to ignore. The second part that we focus on is experiential living. We've forgotten to live in the present. One of my most famous quotes is by Dale Carnegie, where he says, "Today is the tomorrow we were worried about yesterday." It was there in Ikigai as well. This is written by Dale Carnegie in the 1900s, early 1900s, right? But Dale Carnegie spoke about this much before all of us got into this rat race. And he says, today is the tomorrow we were worried about yesterday. We always keep saying this, right? Oh, what will happen tomorrow? What will happen tomorrow? What will happen tomorrow? Oh, let me do this for tomorrow. Let me save this for tomorrow. Let me put this on tomorrow. Procrastination. One of the biggest, pandemics in the world today. We all procrastinate. I will do this from tomorrow. Okay. But when that tomorrow comes, that tomorrow shifts to another tomorrow. What about today? So I tell all my clients a very simple thing. You may want to start something tomorrow, that's okay. But tell yourself, I will do this from today. Because when you say that, your subconscious mind keeps this in the mind that this is top of my priority. I have to do this today. You might do it practically tomorrow. But tell yourself, never tell yourself I will do it tomorrow. Trust me, it will never happen. I've seen hundreds of clients like this who tell me, from tomorrow I'm going to start this. Doesn't happen. Even if it means starting something for 5 minutes, do it today. Start living in the moment. Start enjoying what we have. Makes no sense to talk about what happened. What's gone is gone. You have no control, right? What's going to happen? We don't know. However, in logotherapy, we don't say forget the future. A lot of psychologists talk about that. Oh, we don't know the future. No, it's unknown. Yes, it is unknown. We always say emphasize on planning things for the future. There is a practical side to logotherapy. We always keep this in mind. Yes, you need to plan. You need to save yourself. You need to do things for your future. But you cannot live in that planning stage. You cannot live in that future. You can't say, I will keep doing this later. Because that later might never come. So you have today. So start thinking about it today. Start looking at it today. And that, again, there are techniques which Frankl talks about which helps us to start living in today. And these are things which are all life-changing mechanics. It happens over a period of time. It cannot happen overnight. Right? You have to have things happening today. Live for the today, enjoy the most, make the most of what it is. Forget about tomorrow. It will come. And if it comes, you need to be grateful for it. Right? But you can't live for tomorrow. You have to start living today, which we don't do in most of the times. One of the other things which this particular thing is causing stress in the world, there's a new term in psychology that we are dealing with called meta-stress. Okay. What is meta-stress? Meta-stress is something that is derived from this so-called illusionary world of social media that we live in. Okay. We are going for a beautiful trek, climbing the mountain, you go on top of Jabal Jais, you are busy taking photographs and everything else. Fine, for memory's sake you'll do it. But what most people do, they will immediately post it on social media and then wait. Oh, now somebody is going to reply. Somebody is going to call me. Why did this person not see or like my photograph? They're not enjoying the moment there on top of Jabal Jais. They're enjoying a virtual world that probably doesn't exist. So one of the practices, I had this client in India who I was dealing with, and he had this phobia about social media. Every time he would post something, you would expect millions of people to reply. He had millions of followers. Okay, very, very prominent guy. And then he would live in the stress. Oh, I've got lesser likes. He starts comparing himself with other social media influencers. He's got more likes than mine. Okay, so what? He stopped enjoying the moment he was doing things. He was living in a virtual universe which never happened. So one of the tricks I told him, I said, let's do an experiment. Let's do an experiment on your Facebook or Instagram, whatever feed he was. I said, write an SOS message. Just write help. Let's see what happens. So people started commenting on it. Okay. There was a string reaction to it. People started, oh, what happened? I hope you're fine. I hope you'll be okay. I'll pray for you. I'll do this. I'll do that. How many people called him during that time? Probably 4. And 4 of his family members called him to check on him that what really went wrong. Was he okay? Was he fine? None of his friends, none of his colleagues, none of his associates, none of his so-called social media influencer managers or social media managers, digital managers, God knows what all designations they have nowadays, none of them called him to check whether he was okay or not. He got a shock of his life. He said, I have millions of followers. So this is exactly what happens to you. You have millions of followers, but you have 4 people who called you to find out what really happened to you. suddenly he had this realization that I'm so alone in this world. We all have that realization. We think, if we have 1 million followers somewhere or 10 million followers somewhere, people are getting influenced. Yes, people are getting influenced. Maybe they are seeing something. They may get influenced, they may not get influenced. But what about you? Do you want to live in their world of getting influenced, or do you want to live your life? So it's important to live your life. Forget about what others are doing. So now also he's still active on social media, whatever, but he enjoys his moment thoroughly. He says, I don't care how many people like it, how many people don't like it, or whatever. I'm just enjoying what I'm doing in my life. And fair enough. That's good enough for him. The third thing, which is the last pillar of logotherapy, is attitude. Having a positive attitude towards life is something that makes all the difference. Okay. If we are able to put this into practice, a lot of things will change for us. Having a positive attitude towards anything, like I said in the first instance, everything happens for a reason. Good, bad, worse, ugly, we don't know, right? But everything happens for a reason. Eventually life plays its part and we all live happily ever after, if we want to. It's all about the attitude towards what you have in your life. So again, I'll explain this across how a client of mine used this technique in his daily life. I have a client who came to me 2 years back with anger management issues. And we did the whole process of this coaching exercises with him. And he mellowed down a bit. He started understanding this. But this aspect of attitude, he picked up very seriously. So he went to Georgia for a vacation from here, landed there, had 4 days in Tbilisi as everybody else would do. He was supposed to fly to Armenia from there. And at that time, he was stopped at the airport. He was said, you can't travel to Armenia, you don't have a visa to go. Just take yourself to this situation. You have an anger management issue fellow. What would be the scenario at the airport when he's told he can't travel because he doesn't have a visa? He would have created a big ruckus. He would have taken that entire airport on his head. He would have spoiled the environment. He would have shouted. He would have yelled. He would have abused. He would have done all that he could have think of in this world. But this guy on the other side did exactly the opposite. When he came back and he told us in one of the forums like this, it made me so proud because he said, the moment something like this happened, I practiced what was told to me. I said, maybe there's something good waiting to happen. So he first politely asked the lady why I can't travel. And she said that even though you are a UAE resident, if you were traveling from UAE to Armenia, you could have got a visa on arrival. But you're going from Georgia to Armenia, you can't get a visa on arrival. You need to have a visa done earlier. Now, there's a technique we follow called ABC and AUC. So ABC is actions beyond my control, and AUC are actions under my control. So very conveniently, he said, what kind of a situation is this? He said, this is an ABC situation. I can't do anything around it because it's beyond my control, it's beyond anybody's control who's sitting here in the airport. So he politely went off the airport, called the hotel where he was staying. They said there's a room available, you can come back. He went back, he spoke to a travel agent or a company, and he went and spent 4 beautiful days in the rural areas of Georgia. And he had a wonderful time over there. When he came back and he spoke about it, he said, if my attitude was negative towards the situation, I would have spoiled my entire vacation. Not just for myself, but also for others around me. But he looked at it positively. He maintained a positive attitude. And he said, maybe there's something good waiting to happen. And he actually found a good way to spend the next 4 days in Georgia. And that was the way he transformed his life. So now every time he faces a situation like this, he remembers whether it's an ABC situation or an AUC situation. What's the attitude he needs to maintain towards that? So if you're able to maintain a positive attitude towards life, life will give you positivity back. If we have a negative attitude towards life, life will give you negativity back. It's all about that aura. And this is the crux of how Edith Eger went on to write a book called The Gift, which is an extension of logotherapy, where she says, be selfish in life. And she only talks about the same thing. It's all about your own energy and all about your own auras. Because if you are negative, everything around you is negative. If you are positive, you start looking at others with positivity. You may get positivity back or not, that is not in your hands. But you are giving positivity to the world. And that's what the world tries to give back to you. So if after going back from here, you suddenly feel that, you know what, this was just a waste of my time, fair enough. That's your perception, that's your way of looking at the meaning of what was said here. Right? And nothing's wrong in that. Maybe you're not ready for it. Maybe this topic is not for you. Maybe this is not the way for you to learn about life. Right? You may choose to step back and never come back. Or you may choose to be our friend Joel here, who's probably attended like 20 sessions with us. And each time he hears the same speech, but each time he comes back. I don't know why.
It's good to be reminded.
See, it's good to be reminded. That's his approach towards life. Like I said, every time I read Man's Search for Meaning, and I would have read it some 20 plus times, I find a new perspective. Right? So if you choose to be in that environment where you really want to make a difference and learn from some science, you could choose this. You can step out and say negative things about this session. Fair enough, it's your call. You could go out and probably spread the word and get 2 new people or 5 new people or 10 new people the next time. It's happened with me. People have stepped out of this room and called me and said, you know what, we want to come back for a personal session. Or they've invited me to come and speak to their teams in offices. Or I have also been invited to go and speak in lecture at universities and colleges to students. It's all about what you want to do with this life. And it's not about saying that whether it's good or bad. It's about how you want to make a difference to your life. So when you say that you are looking for the meaning or a direction in your life, it is in your hands. Nobody else is going to guide you, hold your hands and tell you this is what you should do. Somebody can hold your hands and take you to that decision or make that decision a little easier for you by evaluating you or by helping you understand yourself better. And that's what the role of a psychologist is. As logotherapist, we will never tell you what you have to do in your life. A lot of psychologists will tell you what you're supposed to do with this situation. Because they look at precedents, they look at previous situations that happened, and they'll tell you, okay, probably you try this, this will work for you. Right? People do that. In logotherapy, we don't do that. You have the answer to your own problems. That's a basic premise as well. You're in a situation, you've reached that situation. How you reach that situation, you know it. Now, how you're going to come out of it, you will only know it. I will not know it. So a lot of people come to me, standard. Around 90% people, when they come to me with problems, the first introductory session is, I hate my job. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a career counselor. I'm not going to get you a job. I'm not an employment agent. So why are you here? Right? But I hate my job. What are you supposed to do? I want to quit. So why are you not quitting? But there are XYZ reasons. Why are you not quitting? Now whether that fits into the scheme of your meaning of life, it's up to you. And if you accept it, the better you accept it, the better your life will be. Towards the end, I want to give you one last example of my own personal experience. I was invited last year to go and attend these labor camps around Dubai. And that's one place where I actually felt when I was going that I will find a lot of negativity. I will find a lot of emotional breakdowns and people who are going to complain about their lives, about the situation in which they were living, etc. I found it to be the happiest place of all. People who are there, they have found their meaning. They have found their purpose. So when I was talking to people, and I remember specifically talking to someone from Sri Lanka, and he said, every morning when I wake up, my wife sends me a picture of my 2 daughters going to school. That's my meaning. That's my purpose. He said, I forget everything else that I have to go through. I immediately forget about the fact that I'm sharing a room with 8 people. I immediately forget about the fact that I go once in a year to my house. I forget about the fact that I have to work, in 52 degrees and 50 degrees and all of that stuff. He says, I immediately forget all those things the moment I see my daughter's faces. Or I met another guy from Africa who said that, I am the first person in my village to actually build a strong house in my entire village, like a proper permanent house where his parents are staying. These little achievements, these little meanings of life, is what drives you, is what drives each one of us. And it's important to know that meaning and that purpose. For most of us, it's linked to our families and people. For some, these meanings are related to causes. We've had so many people who've done charity in their lives, who are great social workers, for example, who've done so many things for others in life. Right? Those are again people who are excellent examples of how you find a purpose, how you find a meaning, and you live through that. Come what may, whatever happens, you live through that. And you forget the pain, you forget the struggle. Or for some people, this is a very controversial thing. A lot of people say, for some people, money is the meaning. I ask them a simple question: what's wrong in that? What is wrong in that? As long as they have clarity of thought, as long as they know what they want to do, as long as they're building a business, and you're not understanding that business is providing employment to so many people. That business is paying taxes for so many countries. Right? So what's wrong in building a business? There's nothing wrong. As long as the objective is clear, as long as the meaning is clear. There are some people who spend all their lives in politics. They may claim we want to make a difference to our country, we love our country, we do this, we do that. Yes, we may all question them. But how many of us have actually taken the courage or how many of us actually have the guts to give up our whole careers and get into politics and do something for our countries? It's easier to sit across the table and criticize, right? But maybe they are genuinely people who really want to make a difference, and they are probably making a difference, which we are not able to see. But that also is a meaning. That also is a purpose. We all come from countries where we fought for freedoms, we've had wars, we've had so many instances in the past, right? For those people at that point of time, that was the meaning, that was the purpose. The momentary meaning, as we call it. Frankl talks about a very interesting term called meaning of the moment or momentary meaning. Because a lot of people ask this question. So this guy who's found happiness in sending his daughters to school, what happens when his daughters grow big? His meaning changes. That's what is called momentary meaning. There's no fixed meaning or ultimate meaning as we keep looking. This will keep changing from day to day, time to time. Look at our own lives. When we were kids, what was the most important thing that gave us happiness? Buying candies, or running in the park, or running in the playground, or hiding away from our parents and doing something. Right? As we went to college and universities, what became our happiness quotient? Running away, bunking classes, going out with girlfriend, boyfriends, right? Going for a party without telling anybody, having a hangover night, all of those kind of things. That brought us happiness. The moment we became career-oriented, what brought us happiness? Progress in our careers, progress in our salary structures, in our designations. All of that brought us happiness. As we got involved with people, with relationships, got married, have children, our momentary meanings keep changing. So if we are able to, again using the principle of experiential living, if we are able to live in today and understand our meaning of today, live in that moment, we will be very happy. And that's what in a gist is logotherapy. It tells you to live in the moment. Enjoy what's happening today. Forget about tomorrow. Forget about what happened in the past. What's gone is gone. What's coming, we don't know. What we have on hand is the present, right? So the present is the gift. That's why it's called the present. So we need to enjoy that rather than looking at the future. So logotherapy is a combination of all of this, and of course it is an open science. It continues to evolve with human life, with human existence, and with human evolution. There will be a lot of people who've changed the ideologies of logotherapy, also challenged the idea. Just like Frankl challenged the ideology of Freud as well as of Adler. There are lots of people who came to challenge the philosophy of logotherapy also. Fine. We tell you in logotherapy that nothing is perfect, everybody is unique. There is no concept of right or wrong. What suits me may not suit you. Right? There's no common medicine to this thing. It all depends upon who you are as an individual and what is it eventually that you want to achieve in life. And what is that larger meaning or purpose you are keeping on looking for. Chances are that ultimate meaning we will keep looking for even to the last day of our lives. Even on the last day of our life, we will keep asking, okay, so what more? What am I supposed to do? What am I doing here? What was I really doing my entire life? At that time, of course, with maturity, a lot of things will change. Our experiences grow with maturity, with age, as we experience more and more things in life. So it really depends upon how we want to encapsulate this into our lives. Techniques are very simple. They're part of the whole gamut of logotherapy. It's all there online. It's all there in the books for you all to read. A lot of it is also explained very well in Ikigai as well, as a book. So it's there for you to read and understand. And if there are any thoughts or anything that you want to share or talk, if you have had any experiences around it, feel free to share.